Welcome, everybody, to our August 3rd Thursday training. I'm very excited about this one because I always love it when the skill set crosses over between GED and ESL. I always think the impact is so much greater, and we know that these are those universal academic skills that all of our students need. So I want to thank Laura Smith Hill for putting together this presentation for us today on summing it up to practice our summarization skills with our students. So, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky, and thank you for getting us started today. This is a topic I've been eagerly awaiting discussing with all of you. Knowing that it affects students of all types and has some implications to the learner's success with what their goals are, whether it is making our goal for them to make a gain on their Best Plus 3.0, or say they are working on summarizing and writing for their GED, needing this skill is really, it can take some scaffolding and it can take some time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So it was a couple winters ago, I attended a session with Jessica Jones out of Minnesota. And she, I thought, did such an elegant job of breaking things down with how she was seeing success with teaching summarizing. I remember my experiences from teaching summarizing and identifying main idea with my intermediate level students. And it it was kind of a puzzle to put together what would help them achieve it. Seems simple enough for those of us who can do it. But we need tools and strategies to help our students achieve that. So my first discussion question for us, I'd love to hear your thoughts on is why do we teach our learners the skill of summarizing? How does it apply to the students in your context? And you can unmute or you can put it in the chat and we can read it out.
Was it a way for us to know that our students are actually understanding what's being taught?
Oh, I love that.
It's a
That's a good
crit
one, Jennifer. What do you think, Kate?
Sorry, it was a critical thinking skill as well, being able to fully comprehend and then cut it up. Not so much, sorry, not cut it, but cut it up, but be able to parse out what is the most important. And then also it's an English practice, a skills practice to be able to rephrase it or paraphrase it in your own words, which is also important academic skills so they don't get caught in a plagiarism trap in higher ed.
Good point, Kate. Anybody else?
Heather posted in the chat, students need to be able to summarize so that they can recognize the key points of what they are listening to and or reading. And I really like that distinction of um, summarization as a listening skill as well as a reading skill, because we do sometimes have to summarize conversations that we're part of. Um, John Anderson said as a work readiness or workplace skill. I was thinking that, and I was also thinking kind of as a combination of those two, as a just a basic communication skill. So often in active listening, one of the things that you need to be able to do is listen to the person that you're communicating with and then give them a summary of what you heard, to make sure that you're both having the same conversation. So
I really like that comment and example because it applies even to us as professionals. So if we can put ourselves in our students' shoes and realize that oftentimes we as native speakers and as highly educated professionals still have room to improve with this reflecting back. Let me make sure I understood this. Um, I know I don't want to embarrass her, but Diana is really, really good at doing this. She's a very strong communicator and uses this skill really well. So she's a good role model for many of us. So when our students develop that, oh, you can just imagine the advancement opportunities that they'll have because it adds professionalism as well as it enhances the communication overall. Anybody else? Excellent examples.
I think this is one of those reasons that only teachers would say, but we teach our learners the skill of summarizing because we're all pretty bad at it sometimes. It's not, like you said, it's not as easy as it seems. It's not the simplest skill. So, just it's a skill we all need to have and to learn.
I'll just say too quick that I think I've found in teaching that summarizing is similar to the skill of finding the main idea. It's not exactly the same, but it is similar. And main idea is one of our state competencies for the Literacy 3 level for whichever programs use those. So related, not exactly the same, but very helpful. I think when I teach it, a light bulb really goes off. It's not just about understanding every word or every sentence, but to understand what's important about it it's helpful for life, as others have said.
If it's a listening text, we have to listen really closely in order to be able to summarize something. And any of us can falter in really paying attention when we're listening. That it's a great capstone to active listening. Are there any implications to STAR or Best Plus assessors, those that are administrators of the Best Plus 3.0? Do you see any implications here?
Yes, the difference between a 4 and a 6.
Yes, they really can't get beyond NRS level 4 if they cannot summarize the audios from Best Plus. So, agreed.
Say a little more about that. What will your learners, when you're testing someone, what do they hear?
What do they?
Ma
Well-
Many times they, instead of summarizing, they just give their opinion right off the bat. They're supposed to hear, you present a situation, they hear an argument for one side, an argument for the other side, and they're supposed to summarize person A's argument, then they summarize person B's argument, and then in the last part, they get to give their opinion. But almost always, they just give their opinion right off the bat. They might even just say, "Oh, I don't agree with that," and then just start talking about why they didn't hear or didn't understand summarize that.
Tricky. So they're hearing something like, listen to this argument and summarize it, or please summarize this argument
Yes, something like that. Yes.
or opinion.
Yeah.
Whew.
You're going to listen to Sam and then blah, blah. Then I will ask you to summarize his argument. Like those are the exact words from the test. And then usually, yes, they give their own opinion right away. And then by the third time, when you say, tell me your opinion, they're like, well, I already told you my opinion twice, but okay, I'll say it again. And it's an easy way to tell, like, if they can do that, if they can actually summarize, they understood what it meant and actually do it. That's like the elite students in the program that can get a 5 or 6. And I think it's a big jump because there are a lot of students, I'm sure you guys have seen it too, they'll just be crushing this test. They'll do incredibly. I just tested a student like that today. She's amazing. And then get to the summarize and nope, no summarizing whatsoever. She just gave her opinion and Okay, she got a 4. That's a clear NRS level 4.
And this is not a non-native English speaker related issue, I will say. Speaking on behalf of the GED teachers, and as a STAR trainer and instructor, this is one of the hardest skills. It's one of the hardest skills for students because even if they understand the concept that they're not supposed to just give their opinion, which many of them don't, right? We do this in the GED extended response too. And very often they'll do the same thing. Instead of saying which argument is better supported, which is what the prompt says, they will go ahead and just give their opinion. So even if they don't do that, they often want to either say very much too little, so you don't even have the essence of what is there, or pack every single detail in, so it's basically just whatever they were trying to summarize, just restated in slightly different words. So it's a very difficult skill for so many of our students and not just our English language learners.
Today I gave this part of the test, like actually that's why I was late. I was giving that part of the test and I had a really she was speaking really well and she almost started to summarize, she kind of summarized, but then she started giving her own real world examples until it went off on a tangent and told me a story of the example. And so just yeah, they don't get that I just want you to summarize what he said.
I hear 2 layers of instructional opportunity, the teaching people to understand the question and the task, and understanding the skill of summarizing something other than your own opinion or your own idea. Yeah. Real doubly difficult. So thank you everybody for those thoughts because you perfectly laid the foundation for why we're gathered here today. Be thinking about how you teach it. I'm going to give a few examples and then we will discuss this at the end of the session. Now, I want to make sure we have enough time for you to share your examples. So I'll give a few tidbits of ideas on how we can scaffold the skill related to what Amy shared. That main idea is connected to summarizing. That's one of the steps to being able to provide a summary. So we're gonna take this in chunks. How can we vary materials to teach summarizing, vary activities and objectives, vary pacing, and then have our time of discussion. So what do I mean by varying materials? We can have the same task, but then scaffold by giving them different examples. And the incredible teacher that I observed these examples from made the statement, I never stopped teaching summarizing. I never stopped teaching the concept of main idea. She recycled it throughout the year. That's how much repetition her students needed to master this skill. So here's an example. The task is, what is the main idea? And then she would have her students work in groups to write one sentence on main idea. So for example, their first activity might be a photo. What is the main idea of the photo? So the visual text of a text can be visual, and this is an example of that. So in my group, we might work together to write. And if you're focused on oral communication, you could sure have that group come up with a sentence together to state the main idea of the photo. The second example on the right side of your screen, a short text. And I took the example of a job application, of a simple job application. Their task is to write the main idea of this text. Adam Smith, who happens to be my brother's name, is applying for a job. That would be enough. The third example is to provide level appropriate texts. I know our teachers are increasingly getting comfortable using generative AI to develop those level texts. I use generative AI to create this sample job application that my students can read. So in this case, I might provide a basic job application, a slightly more difficult one, and then a really hard one. And as you can see, their task is the same each time. What's the main idea, but with increasingly difficult types of text. The same approach can be used to teach finding supporting details. So you can see how we're building from the main idea to supporting details to writing a summary or orally providing a summary. Same activity with each material set. What are the details? Work in your group to write maybe 3 sentences. And I'm using the same set of examples. And yes, that's so interchangeable. I think Teacher Kate, you've shared on occasion that you use, what is it, the New York Times images. So there's so many rich examples of visual text that we can provide. It could be a chart or a graph that they're reading and getting the main idea, finding supporting details. So hopefully this gives you a framework that you can start to apply to, oh, how would I use that with my own students? Part 2 is varying the activities and objectives. Are we going too fast? Or is this okay? Okay. Varying activities and objectives. Here's an example of either having a group work on this or an activity for the whole class you're working with to do a close reading to find the main idea. And I really liked these steps of, in your group, you read this text aloud. You identify unknown words. And number 3, you use resources to define them. And if you can imagine, this teacher, Jessica, did this all year long. So every time she had a new student, they could join a group that was already well trained, and they would do this all throughout the year. Maybe they use their technology, they probably do, use their smartphone to define some of the unknown words. Then number 4, they cover this text with their hand or maybe turn it over. However that works in the visual world. I mean, in the online world, you may need to show them what I mean. Turn your paper over, no looking. What is the main idea? And then I loved number 5. If you cannot say the main idea yet, repeat number 1 through 4 again. Does that process sound familiar to anybody who's done a close reading type of activity? I love that it's self-correcting and self-guided. It gives them the tool of becoming an independent learner. If you can't do it yet, do these steps again. So I thought that was really exciting. And this is the basic English student story that I was able to create for today's lesson using my AI resources. Here is a second example of the same activity. They're doing a similar process with a new objective. So this is varying the objective to summarize. Did I skip one? Huh. Oh, I'm sorry. My clicker is going in the wrong direction. Okay, so main idea, and then summarize, same steps. And then the more difficult combination of finding the main idea and summarizing. And again, if they can't do it, to repeat those 1 through 4 steps, you can see that if they're doing this throughout the whole year, they're going to get really used to that routine. It was the same. And the fourth example is pretty straightforward, varying the pacing of activities. So this can work with multi-level, and this can also work developmentally over time, that we start with that student with fewer activities, more teacher support, maybe just what's the main idea of this picture? What are the supporting details? Tell me a summary. 2, on the more advanced end, where they have more activities, more student independence, and I'm throwing a lot of the activities at them, but they've had so much training over time that they're able to do that with more independence and more fluency. And at this stage, I'm probably integrating the language they need to listen to know what kind of a summary. Summary of what did he say, what did she say. Another example that came to mind for me is the conversation moves model that many of our teachers in South Dakota have been trained in previously. And that involves a student having, 3 students in a group, and they have to answer one question or respond to a prompt, and then the next student has to say, what did he say, what did she say? So even that conversation move of what did he say, what did she say, required them to listen, but they're providing a summary. They're providing a verbal summary. And that's something that I would weave through their experience for the year. So again, quotes from Jessica out of Minnesota: we never stopped teaching the concept of main idea. And she gave me permission to share this with you because she wasn't able to join us herself. I really like that concept, and that's the way it is for us as instructors with any complex skill, is we don't stop teaching it. It's not a one and done. It's not just this week and then we're good until next year. We keep popping that up and including it in routines, building summarizing routines, because we know that brains love structure, things that are patterns, reliable and predictable. So their brains love them, and it makes our lesson planning pretty sweet too, when we have predictability for what to prepare for our students. So now we will pause for a time of discussion. We went over varying materials, and I showed you the example of a visual text versus a simple written text, or even having 3 level texts if you have 3 different Lexile groups in your class. The second approach was varying the activity and the objectives. And we went from, we used close reading. That was the example, was to read it aloud, find the unknown words, use your resources to define those words, and then try to either find the main idea, find the supporting details, or summarize, or a combination. And then varying the pacing is you're controlling, finding a satisfying, let me review that phrase there. Look for a satisfying amount of challenge and level of expectation at the top of your screen.
Laura, do you think one more level of difficulty to add would be, like, I love your generative text. I mean, it's very real life to our students. I think it's a good, simple starting point example, as you said, but it is a summary of just kind of a factual narrative text, right? Do you think to add another layer in and to meet some of the expectations of some of the assessments we're working with, both in GED and in ESL, we would maybe generate simple opinion-based pieces as well, since that's one of the wrinkles that a lot of our students are having trouble with.
I love that idea. That
I
would
just
be so appropriate, Becky.
that differentiation is so hard from them between like agreeing with someone else's opinion and summarizing that person's opinion, and working on it explicitly might help that click a little bit for our students.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that would be so helpful for our learners. So the text could be, women should never be truck drivers. And these are the reasons why I believe so. Because the story was a rare occurrence where once in a while a female student in our classes will express an interest, right, Kate, in studying for truck driving. And I try to keep an open mind about that. And if they say, oh, I want to study, oh, you want to study for truck driving?
Mhm.
I don't know that we've had anyone follow through. We did have a very petite Afghani woman once who said, she was your student, wasn't she, Kate? She was
Yes.
brilliant.
And we're teaching a CDL class now, and we have women in the class for sure.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, so we could find all kinds of controversial, juicy topics that our students are already discussing sometimes,
Right.
or pick something more neutral.
Well, and I like using the text you have here as the basis for your initial activities, and then going into, okay, now let's look at people's opinions about women being truck drivers. And yes, women should never be truck drivers. Here's why they can't do the job. And then here's the other side. Of course, women can be truck drivers. Women can do anything men can do. and, and why they're well suited to that career. It's a nice exercise um, in understanding points of view too, I think, and then in looking at evidence, which again, those critical thinking skills, like we talked about at the beginning, building those up.
Definitely. Oh, I love that. I'm so excited about that idea. It would be so fun and easy to do with generative AI. Once again, plug for generative AI. But it would be. And to do the contradictory arguments, I love that opportunity to show our students that and allow them to summarize both perspectives. They have a lot of getting used to with that task. So here are some final questions for your input. And if we're a small enough group, we can just stay here in the, yeah, I think we can. We can stay in the big group, at least for starters. What has worked well for you in teaching main idea, supporting details and summarizing? Number two, what resources do you use to provide texts? Where do you go to get your text? And what activities or materials, approaches will you keep or tweak from this share today for the students you're serving? So let's start with number one. Does anyone have a success that they can share on something that has worked really well for you in teaching summarizing so far? I know there is at least one teacher in this group that has used show me the details or citing the evidence on a regular basis. And just like that phraseology I used earlier, that teacher never stopped teaching citing the evidence. It was repeated throughout their curriculum. And I feel like that lends itself to supporting details. Does anybody have a strategy that worked well for you or activity that you use?
Something small I do when we're working on summaries, I always bring in the metaphor of the hamburger, and I will draw a crappy looking hamburger on the sheets. A student once told me it looked like a spaceship, and I'm like, excuse me. Anyway, What I tell the students is when they're doing summary work is to think about a hamburger. We like the tomatoes, we like the onions, but the best and most important part of a hamburger is the meat. Look for the meat. If you find something that is nice, but it's not central to it, that's a tomato, that's lettuce. It's nice, but we don't need it. It kind of works for some, it kind of doesn't work for others, but the students at least sort of know what I'm going for.
So in the hamburger, you're teaching them structure or details?
Sort of both. Basically, I use the metaphor of the hamburger of when you eat a hamburger, students, what do you like? What's the most important part? And of course, I'm looking for them to say meat. Somebody will joke and say tomatoes, but nobody eats hamburgers for tomatoes. I tell them when they're reading to think about a hamburger. What's the meat of the story? What's the most important part, the heart of it? If they find a detail, it's great, but it's like adding a tomato on a hamburger. It's good, nothing wrong with it. It's just not the critical part. If you if you put tomato on a bread, that's tomato sandwich. That ain't a hamburger. I want the meat.
I've used visuals like that before to teach the main idea is hamburger. And what are the details? The bread, the tomato, the meat. I tend to be pretty vegetarian, so I wouldn't be relating to your example. I'd be like, yeah, tomatoes.
I also use that when I teach paragraph structure as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's been confusing yet. Knock on wood.
Are the buns the intro and conclusion? I think we did this at the school I used to teach at, and the buns were the intro and the conclusion, and the meat was the body. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, John Anderson said hamburger metaphor brought to you by South Dakota beef producers. Oh,
Isn't there the Cattlemen's Association? So,
yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Just to introduce the concept of main idea, because it's hard. You know what? When you start teaching that concept, it's kind of hard to grasp it. So I have found that it's helpful to, for example, and Laura, you might have even written this story like way, way back, but there's a story about someone doing laundry. You know, it's very simple, a few sentences. However, I think the key is I don't use the word laundry. I mean, in the story, there is not the word laundry and there is not the word wash. So it's just, I take my dirty clothes and put them in the machine. I add the soap, I put quarters in the machine and I push start or something like that. So that they cannot just like point to one sentence and say laundry in that case for main idea. Okay, so just to get, what's the idea? What is the person doing in this story? What do you think? And then they'd be like, oh, wash clothes or do laundry, whatever. And that is helpful because, okay, look, so the word laundry is not in the story, but you understand the idea. That's the idea of this story. Sorry, I'm such a teacher. Even when I'm talking to you, I have to point at my brain. Yeah, and that has been like kind of a light bulb for my Literacy 3 students anyway. Like, oh, okay, I don't have to necessarily for the main idea. I don't have to find that word in the story because that at the beginning, I think that can be distracting. Then they're just like looking for the details like the tomatoes, right? The overall picture, hamburger, right? It's laundry. Anyway, so that has worked. Stories similar to that, very short paragraphs, has been helpful just to get the concept of main idea.
Thanks for reminding.
You remember, you probably know
Bringing that
the story,
example.
Laura.
I've forgotten about that. You were a great brainstorming partner in my early days of trying to figure out how to teach main idea. I remember us trying to figure out how do we extract this from them? Because yeah.
Like
Amy, that's a great example. And I'm just thinking, as we talk about generative AI, to be able to take some samples and whether you're using AI or not, but yeah, remove the main idea in explicit terms to let them identify that with their own words or their own collocations, or employing that where they're not sidetracked by the details. Yeah, excellent. And I'd be curious to see how that generative AI could respond to that to make sure that, right, we don't have that word laundry in that type of example or whatever it might be. Huh, good.
I find the product from our AI is only as quality as the instructions that we're giving it. And so it takes skill on our part to tell it what to do in such a way that we get the desired end result. But I see it being feasible.
And critical reading of the product to tell it what it got wrong.
Yeah,
Because it makes mistakes just like we do.
sure does. Yeah.
Just to add something, what the example you're giving of the person is cleaning clothes, but it never uses words like wash or laundry. I think when you teach summary with higher level students, paraphrasing is also helpful in that because they're taking that idea and putting it in their own words.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times they're taught in back to back.
Okay, how would you define or contextualize to a layperson the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing?
With summarizing, I think it's fine to repeat keywords or phrases. When my students summarize, I'm usually okay with if they do that, as long as they're not just copying from the text. Paraphrasing, I specifically teach my students, and I would tell others, it's putting it in your own words. Some things absolutely cannot be rephrased, like I'm also thinking about it in a plagiarism context. If a simple statement like Beijing is the capital of China, there's really no way to rephrase that. You're not going to plagiarize that if you say that. But if you can take it and put it in your own words, it's A, saving you from the plagiarism context, and B, it is another way to demonstrate comprehension, because it's not just I can understand, I can pull the main idea out. It's I can say it my own way. It's like a critical thinking exercise.
Yeah, if someone asks you to summarize a whole book or movie, you're going to have far more detail than if you just paraphrase it and give them the very condensed version. Yeah. I know in teaching summarizing main idea and summarizing in the context of STAR for intermediate level readers, we kind of start with who or what is this mostly about, right? So if you can gain that, like, who is this about? What is this about? For the most part, because there's other things thrown in it, right? Because you're looking for the main thing, not, like you said, not the tomatoes, not the lettuce, right? And once we've established that, what's the most important thing that this piece says about that person or thing? So, if you're reading about, this is stuck in my head, which makes me think it's probably one of the examples from the training. If you're reading about the Louisiana Purchase, who or what is this mostly about? Well, it's about, the United States growing. And what's the most important thing? The United States grew drastically as a result of the Louisiana Purchase. So.
Appreciate that STAR connection, Becky.
A good use is to use the readers in Burlington. I take the end of my class, we pick a book and we read for the last 15 minutes of class or 20. And then at the end we say, okay, what happened today? And they're not looking at the pages. They're not, I don't go back and we look at all the pages. It's like, okay, in your head, what happened today? And that's one way that we use summary.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. Heather, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I know we work really hard at getting our students to cite the evidence, which is good and really an important skill. But then we also, once they get into a higher level, we want them to find that main idea. And I really like Amy's story about the laundry, having something where the words aren't there, because it's hard for our students to look at something and say something that's not already written, right? They're so used to or so trained to find the evidence that they forget that there's something more than the evidence. And I know one of the things I do like to do, I spent a few months where every day we were doing a main idea, like just a little thing out of an old book I found. But the book A was just a picture. And we looked at the picture and we're like, okay, what's the main idea? What do you think the main idea of the picture is? And it was really interesting. Just, we didn't have words to pull from. We just had a picture. And usually we could figure out the main idea. And then we looked at what the book said and we were pretty close. So just getting them away, getting them to know that citing the evidence is important, but there's something more than citing the evidence is just really a big step for them. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Heather.
I would go with, the critical thinking skills and thinking outside the box, and it goes with STAR too. So just it's a really important skill that they need to achieve as they grow in their studies.
Felt like when I wrote that laundry story, I was almost playing Pictionary. Like, how do I give them all the details without telling them what the thing is? And is it taboo or is it Pictionary? Maybe they have somewhat similar challenges where you can't say the word, you have to use a circumlocution. So if we give a description, which is the supporting details of an object, the main idea is what the object is, we could play Pictionary or Taboo with our students and ask them what is the summary. But that again is just one step. I love the giving them arguments and opinions. Anybody else? Taboo.
I was also thinking like it would be really good to have like listening things for the students, just like in the Best Plus, that they can hear opinions and talk about it and then practice, okay, I heard this person say ABC and this person say ABC, I think this or I agree with this. So not only having a written story, but a listening activity, stories to go with it.
Heather, I was thinking the same thing. Oh, sorry, John. I was thinking the same thing, and honestly, a really, really simple way to do that is if you go to Google Vids, you can feed pretty much any text into it, and pick a narrator, and it will read it for you. So, and you can make it be like an actual person, or you can just have it be the voice.
That's with Google Vids.
VIDS. Yep.
I think we'll have to look into that.
If you don't want to make your own things, Starlin, didn't you used to do the ReadWorks stories, but not show them the words? Because you can play on the ReadWorks stories, you can press play and listen to them read out loud, but you could not show them the text. You can hide your screen if you're on Zoom or just not give them the text if you're in person, and then make them summarize after. I didn't do that. Starlin did that, but I think you used ReadWorks, right, Starlin?
Yes, and it was good listening activity, and yeah, then they could respond. Sure.
The Marshall Adult Ed, what is that, reading skills for life or something like that now, that you can have them listen also. So that could work well.
Teacher two, I don't know if you have audio, but I think you've used something similar to Google Vids to try to generate audio text or video text. And John, you
Yes.
had a comment. Oh, two, go ahead, you're there.
So we have for AI, we can use voices to create audio so student can listen. And I just found a website. Okay, it's here. So this one, it allows you to create pictures to story pictures, uh, so that how can I put it? To help student summarizing for the main idea.
Is it like a storybook? Like it makes a storybook? Or
You can create things on your own.
okay, like a
For
comic
the
maybe.
video, sake of the
E-
recording, because they won't be able to see the chat, it says free online storyboard maker for
Yep.
film and education story tribe.
The, I guess, URL is storytribeapp.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess mine was more just a comment or thinking aloud, seeking some confirmation. So I'm hearing some of you use a photo, a still photo. Some are using video, some are creating videos. Some are just using auditory or a mix of auditory with maybe the whole or only partial um, close exercise or partial script. Um, then we're summarizing from written texts. Is there anything missing? I'm just thinking of the modalities of speaking, listening, reading, writing, and all of these permutations of summarization, paraphrasing, main idea. And then layered that with differentiated instruction and mixed groups. But it really is a I don't know if it's breadth or depth here of different modalities that you're using for our students and their different learning styles. So I just, I guess, wish to commend you for those sensitivities and those multiple modalities.
So thank you, Kate and Heather, for dropping some more links in the chat. And John, to your question, I believe that some of our citizenship teachers have used a resource like Smithsonian. The Smithsonian Institute has citizenship content. And because the audio was too difficult, we had some of our teachers would turn off the audio and let the image itself, the video images, be the text, and then respond to that, provide a summary or a main idea about what you're seeing in these historical images.
Well, and I don't know if it's a capstone, a gradient, ascending, descending, but to me, then realia, and I know there's a new term in the field where it's in lieu of realia, but authentic materials and utilizing authentic materials as a basis for students to summarize, much akin to that hypothetical generative AI application that you initiated these conversations with, Laura.
Mm.
Right. I got a letter from the city of Sioux Falls about sidewalk repair. And oh my gosh, what do I need to know here?
Definitely. The notice to move your snow removal is happening, move your car, it will be towed in the next 24 hours. Nice realia opportunities. They're abundant
Yeah.
and great examples to bring in.
I just dropped a link from Library of Congress. They're free to use images. They actually have them in sets. And you would think like Library of Congress, oh, it's going to have a lot to do with history and government. No, there's one that's just cats. And it's just like random weird pictures of cats. So they're fun.
libraryofcongress.gov, loc.gov, free to use images. And Kate dropped in her New York Times. What's going on in this picture would be a way to find those images. Excellent ideas for number 2. Any final thoughts on number 3? Anything today that sparked your interest on what you can do to enhance what you're already doing to teach summarizing? Or what would be your takeaway after today? Sounds like we're already using things like images, video, text, AI generated text, the example of Burlington stories as a text.
Next week, I'm going to be having my writing students each write a paragraph with a main idea in mind, and then we're going to share them and see if everyone else can find the main idea. So they're providing their own material.
That's exciting, Starlin.
We'll see how that goes.
Will you do that as a group activity, Starlin, or will you do that sort of a pair work at first so that you can get more return so other students can read it and quietly by themselves try to identify, or do it as a group exercise?
I was planning on it as a group exercise.
Okay, yeah.
But that's a good idea.
But then I suppose, and then with that more familiarity in the future, then that could be a potential for more advanced students to then do that on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not a huge group either, so.
Yeah, gotcha. Very cool.
I think I got all of the links in the chat clicked on so that I can maybe throw them in the comments underneath the video for those who are tuning in after. So
good thinking. All right.
So they will have them.
Thank you, Becky.
To click. Yeah.
That's great.
I always like people to have those good resources that everyone shares.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking at those Library of Congress pictures. They're so interesting and they'd be really good. I'm thinking even like as a warm-up for citizenship, like Rosie the Riveter is an American symbol, and you could tie that into World War II. Just 1 minute, turn and talk to your partner about what you see, and then mini history thing. And that doesn't have to be for citizenship class either. It could be for English, just integrated civics.
And then we're talking about women in the workplace.
I was going to say
the past and today.
Yeah, it could be part of a discussion about what's an appropriate job for a woman. Any job. Yeah.
Well, and I get exciting. I'm so glad that we had an entire T3, and maybe even need future iterations regarding this topic, because at first glance, or maybe at first listen, I'm thinking, oh, that's a an oral skill, but it's also a reading and writing skill, whether you're summarizing in the written word or spoken word. And like we started, so many applications, but maybe, primarily it's engaging the learner directly and they're not passive. And, um, there's no tape score for oracy or for listening comprehension necessarily. And so it's great to see these aspects integrated really across all your class levels, your domain types, and learner levels. So again, kudos. I commend you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the great discussion. I learned a lot from dialoguing with everybody, and yeah, great to see so many applications of the topic. Yes, thank you, John, for the great summary. And thanks everybody for participating today. Thanks to Becky for hosting and putting those links in the recording link. And until next month, right? Do we have
Yeah.
any closing announcements or words?
I don't think so. I think next month we are actually going back to our study circle for the topic. So that's something to look forward to. I know I've been learning a lot from the study circle and really, really enjoying the sessions where we get to review and discuss what we've learned. So that's something good to look forward to for September.
And I would just note that Felicia is meeting with Kendra tomorrow, or Director Ringstmeyer, to review the proposal for the adult education credential for this initiative. So
Great.
yeah,
That's good to know.
that'll be great if we can transact that and move that forward and
Perfect.
recognize our staff's participation. Yeah,
Well, hopefully we'll be able to announce that at the next T3.
yeah, that'd be great.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Laura, for such great information and prompts to get us going on what was a really rich discussion. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yes, me too. And good luck to everybody.
Yeah.
I'd love to see some of those Best Plus test scores go from a 4 to a 5 to a 6. And
Yeah.
so we've got our work cut out for us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Take
right.
care. Enjoy the last bit of summer. Ciao.
Thanks.